Sunnydale High Library, 10 minutes after the attack. Kendra, after losing sight of the so-called policewoman, joined Willow and Buffy in the hallway on the way to the library. Soon, they pushed the double doors to the library open as they hurried inside. Giles looked up in concern, immediately noticing the fear on each of their faces. The three young women quickly told the Watcher about the shooting in the hallway, and when they finished, Giles asked if everyone was safe. Yeah, Buffy replied as she and Willow moved toward the table. Kendra remained near the counter, her hands clasped behind her back, standing as though she were waiting further orders. In the meantime, she took in everything around her, listening closely. Buffy continued explaining, soon confirming her own suspicions that the policewoman might have been a member of the Order of Taraka sent to kill her. The revelation sent Giles pacing across the floor as the group continued talking. Kendra listened as Buffy told Giles that she would have been a goner if it were not for Kendra, and the weird stuff that kept on happening. What weird stuff? Giles asked, halting mid-stride. He looked at Buffy, then at Kendra, and back at Buffy again. What happened? She would pull out a gun or a knife, Buffy explained, glancing at Giles, then at Kendra, who nodded, and back again. And they would just fall out of her hands. Even the first gun she fired at me dropped to the floor, and then it hit her. It hit her, Giles asked, incredulous. He looked to Kendra, who clarified that she had only arrived after hearing the first few shots. She had not seen the gun strike the policewoman's head, but she had witnessed the other weapons being torn from her hands by some unseen force. Buffy is correct, Kendra stated evenly as she met Giles's gaze. It seemed as if there was another power at work. It was really weird, Giles, Willow added, nodding. Knives, guns, all over the floor. I'm just glad Buffy and Kendra are safe. I mean, from that crazy gun lady. Yes, of course, as am I, Giles replied, nodding as his attention shifted from Kendra back to Buffy. On the way, his eyes briefly met Willow's. She offered a small, relieved smile. Buffy continued talking, and Giles adjusted his glasses as he listened. If you enjoy immersive Buffyverse audio stories and darker alternate takes on familiar characters, consider subscribing so you don't miss future chapters. Your support brings more of this story to life. It was Kendra who noticed the exchange. She saw Willow glance back down at the table with that faint smile when Buffy spoke about how they needed to get Angel back and then kill both Spike and Drusilla. Yes, Giles murmured, distracted while Kendra continued watching Willow. Kendra did not know the redhead. In truth, she did not know any of them. She respected Giles because he was a watcher, and she had been trained to respect watchers as they possessed knowledge far beyond her own. She only knew that Buffy was a slayer, the same as herself. They were both warriors. But the redhead did not seem like anything to Kendra. She did not appear to have special skills, and she had been hiding behind a table with the other normal people. In the world of a slayer, one learned to expect the unexpected. Yet Kendra could not imagine that Willow had been the one to help them. She would be most ineffective in the open, Kendra thought, as she listened to Buffy, Giles, and Willow. And yet, no one else stepped out of the shadows to help us. No, this Willow is too protected. Perhaps Mr. Giles believes she is the weakest among Buffy's so-called friends. She smiled because he cared about her safety as well. Yes, that is it. This girl is no warrior. Mr. Giles is simply glad to see her safe. From what I have seen in my short time with them, he is very protective of them both. He even wishes that Buffy were more like me. It was then that the doors to the library burst open as Xander and Cordelia, both soaked, thundered inside. Willow glanced over and wondered what had happened to the normally composed brunette, who now wore a look of pure disgust. Out of the corner of her eye, the redhead noticed that Kendra suddenly grew nervous as soon as Xander stepped up beside her at the counter and asked what had happened in the hallway. Seeing how uneasy Kendra was, something that surprised both Buffy and Willow, given how gung-ho the second Slayer usually was since they had met, the two best friends were about to answer when Xander noticed Kendra, turned toward her, and immediately began flirting. Meanwhile, Cordelia dropped into a seat across from Willow, still complaining about some worm guy and her soaked dress. She caught Willow staring and lifted her head, meeting the redhead's gaze before glancing back down at her clothes and wringing out as much water as she could. She had wanted to go to her locker to change, but Xander had insisted on seeing Giles before they did anything else. New haircut? Cordelia remarked as she flapped and squeezed her shirt in a futile attempt to dry it faster. She arched an eyebrow at Willow. Yeah, Willow replied. I don't need to know the story. Cordelia cut in, raising a hand and turning away before directing her attention to Giles. Is it safe to go back out there? Willow smirked at the young woman as Cordelia spoke to Giles, then turned to Xander, who was openly ogling the newest Slayer. It was at that time that Giles formally introduced Kendra to them as another Slayer, called after Buffy's very brief death. Willow wasn't sure if it was because her eyes were open for the first time or if it was Niko's influence, but she couldn't help rolling her eyes and turning away when Xander tried to flirt with Kendra again. And then again. Cordelia was the one who interrupted Xander's questioning of the shy Slayer, informing the group that she and Xander had encountered one of the Order of Taraka's people at Buffy's house. You were at my house? Buffy asked. Why? If you would answer your phone once in a... Cordelia began, then stopped when she noticed Willow waving her hands frantically. What? Cordy? Willow murmured, pointing at Cordelia's shoulder. You? What? Cordelia demanded, then looked at her shoulder and screamed as she simultaneously flicked away a long, fat worm that had dropped onto her. The dead creature landed on the table, and Willow, Buffy, and Cordelia all leapt to their feet and backed away while Giles breathed, fascinating, and moved closer to examine it. You wanted to know what the guy who came after us at Buffy's house looked like? Xander remarked, pointing at the worm as Buffy, Willow, and Cordelia shuddered. Well, there he is. Ew, Buffy muttered as he looked at Xander and then back at the worm. Ew, at least tell me he's... Ew, I get wiggy just thinking about it. Anyway, please tell me he's gone and... After the worms fell on Cordy? Xander asked. Cordelia shuddered again in disgust as she recalled the thousands of worms that had dropped onto her just as she and Xander were leaving the Summers house. I think he's gone. I hope. But yeah, that's him. You and bug people, Xander, Buffy remarked, eyeing him while Kendra stood nervously to one side. What's up with that? But this dude was different than the praying mantis lady, Xander replied, rubbing the back of his head as he remembered that particularly unfortunate incident. He shook himself and returned to the present. He was a man of bugs, not a man who was a bug. Okay, Willow ventured. And, huh? I think the bugs literally make the man, Xander explained. Buffy, Willow, and Cordelia's faces twisted in renewed disgust. Kendra stared down at the floor, avoiding Xander's gaze as he occasionally glanced her way. A few seconds later, Giles cleared his throat and reminded everyone that the most important thing was that they were all safe. Still, we seem to be under heavy attack, Giles cautioned, surveying them. Be on your guard. Now, all of you, get to class. And me, sir? Kendra asked, looking to Giles. Ah, yes. Kendra, if you would assist me with completing my research. I believe I've found something interesting that bears further study. So, if you would please... Yes, I would like that, the second Slayer replied eagerly. Good, Giles said, nodding at her as Willow and the others prepared to leave. He asked Kendra to wait in his office while the rest of the group headed for the door. As Giles moved toward the back office, Giles stepped over to Willow while Buffy and the others were gathering their things and murmured, Good job. Willow nodded with a shy smile, then hurried after Buffy and the others, who were already at the library doors. 8 hours later, when the Scoobies returned to the library, Giles delivered the news that he and Kendra had cracked the remaining keys to the ritual intended to restore Drusilla to perfect health. Buffy was about to ask what the other keys were, when Kendra explained that Spike needed Drusilla's sire, and that everything was meant to happen at a church on the night of the new moon. Which is tonight, Giles added, looking around at them. Did you say Spike needs Drusilla's sire? Buffy asked, staring from Giles to Kendra, worry flooding her face. Yes, Giles confirmed, noticing her expression as he removed his glasses. You know who sired her? Angel, Buffy whispered, gripping the back of a chair. He's Drusilla's sire. Man, Angel got some major neck back in his day, Xander quipped. Willow smacked his arm, scowling. Sorry, Xander muttered as he glanced at Willow. She, in turn, nodded towards Buffy, silently warning him to watch what he said in front of her, since she was already upset. Things were not helped by Kendra, who insisted that they needed to go after Drusilla and that Angel was secondary. Buffy and Willow stood up for the ensouled vampire, while Xander reluctantly agreed that Angel was Buffy's friend. And his friend too, even if he didn't like him. Willow understood why Kendra wanted to kill Drusilla instead of rescuing Angel. Both of them were vampires, with Drusilla being the greater threat. While a part of her agreed with the newest Slayer, something Willow could hardly believe, she also knew that Angel was her friend and would never harm them. In fact, he had helped them. He had helped Buffy. So, in Willow's eyes, Angel needed to be rescued, while Drusilla needed to be destroyed. She was pulled from her thoughts when she noticed Buffy stepping around Kendra, her arms folded tightly across her chest. These Taraka guys can come after me if they want, Buffy declared as she faced Kendra. But no way in hell are they messing with my boyfriend. Then the first thing we need to do is find this church, Willow replied, moving with the others to begin their research. Spike's hideout, 8:30 p.m. Spike burst into Drusilla's bedroom where Angel was bound so that his mad girl could get some fun with him. He had heard Angel's screams and feared that Drew would take her games too far and kill him, the one being who could restore her to her full glory. Drew! Spike shouted as he rushed inside. Drusilla pouted at him, a large bottle of holy water clutched in her hand. Spike glanced at Angel, who was panting as smoke rose from the burns on his chest, scars left by Drusilla's cruel play. Spike shot Angel a glare, which the ensouled vampire returned before turning back to Drusilla and gently cupping her cheeks. It's almost time, Drew, Spike murmured. Angel began to laugh. Spike looked toward him as the chained vampire mocked him, taunting that he was the only one who knew how to tease Drew, that his hands were the only ones that had ever pleased her. Spike's jaw tightened as Drusilla smiled. She adored having two alpha males fighting over her, and would have let them tear into each other for her amusement. If Angel hadn't been in chains, and Spike hadn't been moments from driving a stake through him in rage. Spike, no! Drew breathed as she suddenly gasped and doubled over, clutching her head. Drew! Spike cried, dropping the stake and rushing to her side. What's wrong, love? I see a figure covered in darkness. A dark one with black eyes, Drusilla whispered as she looked up at him, her arms sliding around his neck as she grinned. Face hidden, scent hidden. We will fall into darkness, into fire and screams. My dark prince, we will be lost. You're making no sense, Drew, Spike murmured, kissing her in front of Angel. The ensouled vampire visibly recoiled at the display of what the two vampires called affection. Spike pulled back and turned toward Angel. And now the time has come for the Sire to give everything he has to save his creation. Yes, Drusilla agreed softly, then looked back at Spike with a smile. It's time. Abandoned church, 9 p.m. Willow knew she didn't do much, with Buffy and Kendra holding on to Angel as they escaped. They had saved the ensouled vampire and possibly killed both Spike and Drusilla. However, given the need to hide her abilities from Spike, Willow was forced to take on a waiting for the right opportunity role. It had only been 50 minutes since she and the other Scoobies had burst into one of three abandoned churches in Sunnydale after Kendra had run back to the library earlier that night. She had told them that she and Buffy went to see Willie the Snitch and that they had gotten a location for where Spike was holding Angel. They followed Kendra, who leapt out of Giles' car the moment it stopped. Giles followed immediately after, crossbow in hand. Willow came next, after Giles whispered that she shouldn't use her powers in front of Spike. Behind them were Xander and Cordelia, with Xander clutching a can of sticky paint meant for the one he affectionately referred to as Worm Guy. The right opportunity came after Kendra burst into the church and launched herself at Spike. While the vampire was distracted fighting both Kendra and Buffy, Willow glanced around and noticed a knife stabbed through both Drusilla's and Angel's hands. She could see a magical transfer of energy through a glow surrounding them, a glow the others could see as well. Willow's first move was subtle. She used her telekinesis to pull the knife free and let it clatter harmlessly to the floor. Willow! Giles called. Frowning, she rushed toward the vampire beating on him. She jumped onto the creature's back, locking an arm round his throat while reaching out with her free hand. Giles hurled a stake in her direction. Willow, clinging on for dear life, sent out a sharp burst of telekinesis and pulled the stake into her palm. Huh? The vampire muttered in surprise, glancing at the weapon that had flown into Willow's hand. She drove the point into its chest. Willow wasn't prepared for the sudden burst of dust. She tumbled to the floor, the stake disintegrating along with the vampire. Giles hurried to her side and helped her up, murmuring for her to be more careful before scanning the chaos of the room. Then he looked back at her, concern etched across his face. What if Spike had seen you? He whispered. Across the church, Kendra kicked the former policewoman into a wall. The old woman collapsed unconscious as part of the wall crumbled around her. I'll be careful, Willow whispered back, though she couldn't help acting when her friends were in danger. Or anyone else, Giles. They both turned toward Spike, who screamed as he hurled Buffy aside and rushed to Drusilla. Willow instinctively prepared a telekinetic strike, but a vampire shoved Giles aside and charged at her instead. She stumbled back, searching for anything wooden while keeping herself out of Spike's line of sight and out of her friend's view. Her eyes found Kendra, already sprinting toward her with a stake in hand. The vampire swung. Willow ducked just in time as Kendra vaulted over her head and slammed into the attacker, sending him staggering backward. Willow scrambled to her feet and hurried back to Giles, helping him up as Kendra dusted the vampire. Kendra then turned and hurried toward them. Are you all right, sir? Kendra asked, steadying Giles as well. He nodded. Kendra's gaze shifted to Willow. Are you all right? Yeah, Willow answered, glancing back at Buffy and Spike. They watched as Spike knocked Buffy away and scooped Drusilla into his arms. Willow knew that with everyone watching, she couldn't do anything. She didn't have to. Buffy surged back to her feet and hurled something at the back of Spike's head. He and Drusilla crashed into the massive organ at the rear of the burning church. Buffy rushed to Angel's side, with Kendra joining her, just as Xander and Cordelia burst into the room. Earlier, Spike had thrown a torch at Buffy. It had missed and ignited the curtains. As they fled the burning church, Xander and Cordelia excitedly argued about how they had taken out Worm Guy. Buffy stayed close to Angel, murmuring that everything was going to be alright. Willow lingered beside Giles. He met her gaze and gave her a small nod of approval. Still, Willow knew she hadn't done anything of lasting consequence. The ranger in her sensed something wrong. They never saw Spike's body, but with the flames devouring the room, they had no choice but to leave. Willow wanted to do more for Buffy, but she couldn't risk exposing herself in front of Spike. So, to Willow, she didn't do much this time, and she wanted that to change. Sunnydale Army Surplus Store, 4 p.m. the next day. As Willow opened the door to the Army Surplus store, she found a place devoid of people, very unlike the shop where she had bought her leather jacket, shirts, and jeans. The only person inside was a large man sitting behind the counter, absorbed in a gun magazine. Willow paused just inside the entrance, scanning the store before offering the man a polite smile. He glanced at her briefly, then returned his attention to the magazine. Willow shrugged and stepped further inside, heading toward the counter. The entire time she had been cycling here from Sunnydale High, she had kept telling herself that this was it. If she bought what she needed here, there would be no turning back. She placed her hands on the counter and cleared her throat. The sound made the man look up, his brow knitting as he took in the sight of a slim red-headed girl standing in his store. Hi, Willow greeted sweetly, giving a small wave as she reached into her pocket and pulled out the list. Doing everything she could to keep her hands from trembling, she slid the paper across the counter. The man studied it, then looked up at her, then down back again, as if making sure he was reading it correctly. Young lady, he began at last, setting the paper on the counter. Is this a joke? I think you're in the wrong store and... No, Willow interrupted, shaking her head as she launched into a nervous babble. No joke. I mean, I'm not joking. You see, a friend of mine got some stuff from here for his Halloween costume and was afraid to get a costume like his. I went as a ghost instead because I didn't think I'd look good in a uniform. So he dared me to wear a uniform with all the fixings for next Halloween. And I thought, what the hell? I'll get it now or else I'll chicken out. I mean, everything is for the costume except the baton and the pepper spray. Those are for self-defense. She finally stopped. She continued panting. The man stared at her with one eyebrow raised, clearly amazed that she had managed the entire speech without taking a breath. So, you're getting this get up for next Halloween, he replied, glancing back at the list, then at her smiling face. You do realize the batons you want are dangerous, and I've been getting private training on how to use them. Willow cut in, pointing through the glass at the ones she had seen online. I can prove it to you. I know how to use it, and frowning, the man reached into the display case and withdrew the sheathed batons, placing it in Willow's hands. She looked down at them, then back up at him, smiling. Sliding one of the batons free, she wrapped her fingers around the rubber handle, recalling Niko's Ranger training. 2 months ago, she would never have been able to do this. Since Halloween, she had trained diligently every day. Enough that during the shooting at the school the previous day, she could have telekinetically ripped the weapon from the policewoman's hands and shot her in the shoulder. Willow trained the same way Niko did, combined with the exercises Giles gave her. She stepped back, leaving the sheath on the counter, the retracted baton in her hand. With a flick of her wrist, the weapon extended. The man motioned her toward the dummy. Willow followed Niko's movements perfectly, striking the target with practiced precision. The man nodded in approval and asked whether she had ever attended the police academy, noting that some of her techniques resembled law enforcement training. I have a distant aunt who's a police officer, Willow replied as she retracted the baton and returned to the counter with him. You know how Sunnydale is with all these gangs. She taught me how to defend myself. On the inside, Willow was practically bouncing. She was thrilled that she had managed the demonstration without dropping the baton. The truth, however, was that she had been terrified. It was the first time she had ever used one. But Niko's training had taken over. It felt as though she had known exactly what to do, as if she had done it her entire life. The man, who revealed himself to be a former LAPD officer, helped her find black boots, gloves, two identical balaclavas that covered her head, mouth, nose, and neck, and two black tank tops. Before leaving, Willow asked whether he carried goggles with red tinted lenses. The man shook his head before explaining that he had goggles tinted gray, a shade that appeared black at night. Willow clapped, announcing that she was going to scare her friend next year and, at the same time, win the bet. Laughing, the man helped cash her out before wishing her good luck for next year. Small choices often lead to the biggest transformations. If you're enjoying Willow's journey, let me know in the comments. Engagement helps this series continue. The Rosenberg residence, 11 p.m. Willow finished her homework with excited efficiency before floating back down onto her bed and putting away her books and puzzle pieces. She hurried to her closet and retrieved the bags of clothes and equipment she had bought earlier that day. Chuckling, she pulled out the jeans and jacket and laid them on the bed. She decided not to use the skirts she had bought. Those would become part of her everyday wardrobe. Instead, she selected one of the tank tops and placed it alongside the rest of the equipment. Smiling, she stripped down to her underwear. Her hands trembled as she pulled on the tank top, silently reassuring herself that she was ready, that she would take it slow. This was something she needed to do. She had these abilities, and she wanted to use them in the open to help people. She wanted to be a ranger. She slipped into the tight jeans and turned toward the mirror, letting out a soft laugh as she studied her reflection. She wondered what Oz, or even Xander, would say if they saw her like this. Xander would still prefer Buffy, Willow muttered to herself. Smiling, she sat on the bed and pulled on her socks and boots. Standing again, she fastened the belt the man at the store had recommended to complete the costume. She secured the sheath batons on both sides of her hips and clipped the pepper spray to her back. Then she pulled on the balaclava, smiling beneath the cotton as it covered her face and neck, leaving only her eyes visible. The jacket came next, zipped up to her neck, followed by the gloves, and the grey tinted goggles that hid her eyes. The only thing missing was something to mask her scent. But where she was going, Willow knew Spike would not be there. At least, she would make sure he wasn't before she did anything. And how am I going to get there? She wondered as she faced the mirror, smiling beneath the black material covering her head. Looking down at her feet, she began lifting herself telekinetically, rising and lowering a few times before hovering off the floor entirely. She drifted to the light switch and turned off the lamp, then settled back down, her feet slowly pressing against the floor. Taking a breath of relief, she then crossed the room to a window, with the lights off and dressed in all black. It would be difficult for anyone to notice her slipping out through the window that faced the backyard. Willow stepped onto the section of roof just outside her window, carefully turned and pulled the window closed before sealing it shut with her telekinesis. She crouched low, then straightened and looked up at the sky. Please let this work, Willow thought as, in one smooth motion, she leapt upward, pushing herself with her telekinesis and wrapping the force around her body. She stifled a scream as she rose higher, her body propelled by her power, until she abruptly stopped. Hovering in the air, she turned slowly, staring at the lights of the suburb spread out beneath her. She looked up and breathed in awe at the lights of the city in the distance. Then she felt slightly sick, and that was when she discovered something about herself she hadn't known. I think I'm afraid of heights, Willow murmured as she squeezed her eyes shut. Crap. To be continued.